Hey, you see this little building right here? I'm going to draw one up here in a minute. You see there's a little road that comes in here, and then we've got some fence posts, and we've got several people here. Okay, so as they go back to the distance. Well, where a lot of you make your mistake when you're building something like this, you got to remember that as you enter a painting, the mouth of a road or a river or a stream is generally going to take up the entire foreground of the painting. See how wide this is? A lot of you make it very tiny. Well, everything has to be in proportion to everything else. For instance, every object in life, from a fence post to see these rocks here, the little clumps of grass over here, the building back here, each person has its own plane. See the horizontal lines? Everything in life is on a plane. And some paintings will have dozens of planes. For every object that you create is a plane. All right? Let's first understand that. So let's go up here, and I'm going to go ahead and make a little bit of a, let's just for the sake of clarification, I'll go ahead and make a canvas. All right. Now, what I want to do here is I want to create some objects, and I want to show you how to proportion them to each other so that they're, properly done, so that they don't look goofy, all right? And then I've got a couple of paintings I'm going to use as examples. Okay, let's have a horizon line, say about right here. And once again, we'll have say a road. Now this road will come in like this. Okay. Now, as we start applying or putting objects in here, every object has to be in proportion to any other object on that plane. Now this is where you use what we call artistic judgment, or good artistic common sense, if you will. Let's put our house in there first, because if, say you, and by the way, you usually pivot all of these objects around your main center of interest. So once your main center of interest in there, then it kind of gives you a starting point. It's kind of like doing a portrait or a painting of an animal. A lot of artists like to get the eyes in place first, and from that you can build around it. Kind of gives you a starting point. That's what I do with my birds and animals and most of my people. Now, on this, I've got the road. Of course, the road has to be in there, so that's the entry, or if it were a river, it would be the river. But say I'm going to have a building back here now. Okay? Now remember, this is just a quick study. And so here's our building, all right? And the road's just going to come around and kind of come in front of the house here. All right? Now what I want to do is I want to put some people in there, maybe a dog or a fence post or some rocks or a couple of trees, all right? Now we have to remember that in life you have to use a little judgment. Certain trees are certain sizes, certain types of objects are certain sizes. We're not talking about boulders here. We're talking about rocks that are just standard rocks that you would see in a field. So let me give you an example. Say I want to put a row of fence posts like I showed you in the book there, okay? Let's start, you always start in relation to the object that's already in there. Don't start up here in the foreground. Let me show you why. And this comes from the critiques that I do when I see your work come in the mail and I see proportional problems. This will help solve some of those for some of you. I see a lot of you start here with your fence posts. Your first post is like this, and the second one's like this, and then you just, well, let me see, it's not going to happen. These first posts, if they're going to be this close into the foreground, are going to be very, very tall. But we don't know exactly how tall they're going to be because you have to start back here. So never start your foreground objects first. Start with the background and proportion each object to each successive object that's coming forward. So, well, let's see if I can explain this a little better. You know, you guys got to remember, I'm not real good at explaining things sometimes, so just do the best we can. So you're going to probably holler at me, but I'm just going to test you. First of all, let's put a door in here. Let's see, how about that? Would that be about right, you think? Now, to see, that looks odd, doesn't it? Well, you know visually that's not going to work. It's not in proportion to the building, all right? So what we want to do is we want to get it down in proportion to the building. So we have a door now that's more in proportion to the building. And you know that by studying nature. See, nature is really your best teacher, folks, and that's how you learn these things. This is not something that men just dream up. It's done by studying nature. All right, let's say I have some fence posts I want to have in here. Is the first fence post going to be this tall? Why not? Because it's not in proportion to the building, and it's on the same plane as the building. So in reality, if you go outside your house right now and you find a building and a fence, and the fence post is on the same plane, that fence post is probably not more than 5 feet tall. Now think about this. Let's just use this little common sense. A standard door is about 7 feet tall or thereabouts, maybe a little under. All right, so your fence post, if it's going to be the first one on the same plane, would probably be about like this. So the way you do this is you run a straight line across, and this would be your first plane. The horizon in this case would be your first plane. There are no planes up here. The planes are only on the ground, okay, or on this area. So your first post is there, and it's in proportion to the house. So if you ran a line across there, you would see it'd be about a foot below the top of the door, which would probably be about right for a fence post. It depends, but it varies depending on the farm or the ranch or whatever, but a fence post is around 4.5, 5 feet tall, maybe thereabouts, okay? So you get the first fence post. Now, as you come forward, logic would tell you that things do what? They get taller, they get a little further apart because they're no longer, you're seeing them more closely to each other. In relation to each other, you're seeing them more one at a time. For instance, as we come forward, now the next one's going to be a little taller. I'm going to fix this spot right there. Okay, see there it is. It's just a slightly taller. All right. The next one's going to be a little taller. They get a little bit further apart. Is what I was getting ready to say a while ago. Actually, maybe 2 back there. See, there's 1, 2, and each one of these will get a little taller as they come forward. All right. Now we go ahead and we get these built in here, one at a time, and then there's your final ones. Now, you wouldn't have been able to do this correctly had you not put that first one in relation to the door on the building, or just the building if you didn't have the door. You would just go out in nature and study that. Let that be your teacher. You got to start somewhere. I can't give you, by the way, an exact formula. There's no scientific fix for this, folks. You got to go out there and work at it. Now, let's talk about where we go from here. If this first fence post is in relation to this building, it's on the same plane, then the second post now has a plane of its own. And if you drew a straight line across there, let's use another color. Let's go to red. So post number 2 now has a plane, and it goes all the way across like this. A little space between plane 1 and plane 2. The next post has its own plane. The third post has its own plane. See, it doesn't matter how close they are to each other. They all have their own plane. Okay? Now, you don't have to draw lines, but when you're first learning, sometimes these little things will help. See, every object in life has its plane. Now, this is what I really want to get across in this program because, well, again, when I critique your work, this is one of the biggest misconceptions about painting. All right, now, every object that you now put in this painting has to be in proportion to everything else on that plane. For example, say you want to have a person standing next to this fence post. Well, here's your job as an artist. Now go outside, and maybe you can get a family member or a friend to stand beside a fence post. And you make your own visual idea of what that relationship is. Is the person taller than the fence post? Generally speaking, they are. Unless it's one of these security fences that's 20 feet tall. But most fence posts are 4.5, 5 feet tall, okay? Now, so you look at that and you draw a person. Say you want to put the person over here. Well, we know that because you've been out visually observing this, that the person is probably going to be about 1 head taller than that fence post, okay? So I'm just using quick little simple shapes. So that would be the height of a grown-up anywhere that you put a person now in here. And this is where I've seen this happen. I've seen people draw these people, and they're real small. They may be on the same plane, but they get them too small. A lot of it's just born out of fear. A lot of it's just born out of not observing. Some of it's just lack of knowledge. And so my job is to give you the knowledge to understand how you can get your paintings up and running properly, okay? So you see now, if I want to put this person on this side of the painting over here, now that I have this plane to work with, and I know that in reality, well, see, I just kind of come across here like this. Boink. There's my plane. Here's my person. So that would be the right height of a person in this part of the painting in proportion to this fence post. It's on the plane. Everybody get that? If I put another fence post coming across here, guess what? All the fence posts would be the same height because they're all on the same plane. That makes sense to you?